on BBC iPlayer.
Mike Zeller at breakfast.
BBC Radio Cumbria.
Now, when it comes to movies, the Lake District is a very popular filming location. We've had Mission Impossible, Bridget Jones, 28 Days Later, all filmed here, to name but a few. Now, one of Cumbria's cinemas is the start of a new film, which is due to premiere, actually, in the screen it was shot in.
This is going to sound strange, but I'm going to close my eyes, and I need you to tell me what you can see. What am I looking for? You'll see. I can't really make out who it is or what it is. No, listen, I don't think I'm comfortable with this. Please stay, just tell me what you can see.
That was part of the trailer for short film Beyond the Eye, a psychological horror starring the Keswick Alhambra. It's written and directed by Joe J. Walker, one of the cinema's duty managers. Here's the theatre's owner, Jonathan Moore.
It's really hard to get into the film industry. You either have to come from a family that's in the industry already and has connections, or you have to have money and kind of buy your way in. So when Joe came to work at the cinema, it was great to have him because he's passionate about film, and that's great for us. And then when I found out he was a filmmaker and wanted to make a film, it was a kind of a no-brainer, really.
It's been a long road for 27-year-old Joe, who grew up in Middlesbrough, turning his life around thanks to his late grandfather and a love of cinema. And I'm delighted to say he's on with us now. Joe, morning. Tell us then about Beyond the Eye. What's it all about?
Good morning. So Beyond the Eye is a psychological horror film that, as you said, it's primarily shot in the Keswick Alhambra in the Lake District. And I was kind of very inspired by sort of older horror that has, more of a mythology to it, or like an underlying concept. So maybe something like, Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that, where there's an entity that preys upon people. So that was the initial inspiration. And then in regards to the narrative itself of the film, we follow the protagonist Mia, who actually works at the Keswick Alhambra. And during her shift, another young woman comes into the picture who claims she's there for a trial shift, and Mia's, not privy to this, but she goes along with it anyway, and then they both sort of experience some pretty scary stuff together during the shift.
Now, as we've mentioned, it was your granddad who inspired your love of film. Tell us about your granddad, Joe.
Yeah, so my granddad, who also had the same name as me, I was named after him. I lived with him for the majority of my childhood, and he's sort of my biggest inspiration, really, and he was sort of the person who I looked up to the most growing up, and he sadly passed away in 2018. But yeah, living with him was a very formative time of my life. He was a man of the arts. He was in a jazz band. He loved music, loved movies. So growing up around him, it was really, really sort of eye-opening to see how the creative world works. And he was the one who initially showed me the movies that inspired me to make films. He was the one who bought me my first camcorder. So he was hugely sort of impactful on my life.
In terms of the inspiration for the actual films themselves, where does that come from for you?
It comes from a lot of different things, really. I think, as like other creatives will know, it can be a novel, it can be a movie, it can be a conversation you have with somebody, it can be anything. But for this film in particular, it came from working at the cinema and doing the closes on a night when you're sort of locking up. As beautiful as the cinema is and as aesthetically pleasing as it is, I found that when the lights were off and when you're closing up on a night, it's 111 years old, that cinema. So naturally, as you can imagine, it does get a little bit creepy on a night. And I was like, this could really work as a location for a horror film. So that's sort of how it came about, really.
We heard Jonathan Moore before you and I started chatting, talking about getting into the film industry. As a young person, how difficult do you find it? Did you find it getting a start in the industry?
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, really, because I do agree it is very difficult. You do need, some sort of connections. There's definitely a lot of nepotism in the film industry. For me, I didn't have any connections to the film industry, still don't. And also, coming from money would definitely help, having people around you who can fund your films and things like that. But I sort of, felt that way for a while, and then I realised that, there's sort of no excuse. If you love something, if you're passionate enough about it, you should find ways to make it happen. So that's what I've done. Before this film, every film I've ever made was made for nothing, literally nothing. It was just, writing scripts that hopefully people are interested in, and then people sort of voluntarily are willing to help you make your film. As long as you can get hold of some equipment and, even just have friends act in your films. That's what I did previously. So with this one, it was the first film where I actually did do a crowdfunder. So, some of the locals in Keswick and some friends and stuff donated to help us make it. But it was still, a very small budget.
We wish you well with it when it gets its premiere later on, well, next month as it will be, ultimately. Joe, thanks for coming on this morning. It's Joe J. Walker, a filmmaker living in Keswick, and his film Beyond the Eye will premiere, it is technically next month, at the Keswick Alhambra. 26th of April is when it's going to be screened for the first time. Good luck with that, Joe. Hope it goes really well for you. 26